What is up? Today we're going to be going over the 5 best training methods for strength and power. I'm Coach Nick Lydon, certified strength and conditioning coach and one of the coaches and owners of Athlete Academy. And we are going to be going over the 5 methods that we use throughout our different programs to help our athletes increase their strength and speed, which helps transfer onto the field. So the first one that we are going to go over, which is probably one of my favorite ones, is the contrast training method. This is a very simple method to implement that we use part of typically our second phase into training, maybe a little bit in our third phase of training, because it really helps our athletes start to develop strength to a higher level, but also transitions them more into power. So big increases in strength and power when you start to implement this, and that's because it takes advantage of what's known as PAP, which stands for post-activation potentiation. So what that means is that after doing this method, you are essentially priming your central nervous system, you're priming your muscles, and you're priming your body to be a more explosive, more powerful athlete when you do the movement. So what that does is it will actually teach your body to fire at that rate and then help you transfer over out into other events that you're doing. So it's a great way to really extend that power that you are trying to produce. So it's a heavy compound movement paired with a plyometric movement. Now, when we're doing this, the compound movements need to be in the same angles and same movement patterns, meaning that we're not doing, say, like a deadlift, which is a hinge pattern, into, say, something like a box jump. We want to have all vertical forces or all of the same movement. This stands like with unilateral, bilateral, we always want to make it the same. So an example of this would be like a trap bar deadlift, and this needs to be heavy. It's not light, and you cannot be doing multiple reps because you're going to fatigue your system. And if you're fatiguing your muscles, that's going to diminish your power output. So you need to be doing the correct sets and reps in order to get this, and choosing the appropriate plyos with it, okay? These should be more intensive plyos, not extensive plyos when we're doing this. So something like a trap bar jump into a max vertical jump, you're gonna prime your system, prime your muscles in order to jump higher. And it's something that we use in our programs. The next one that we're gonna get into is called the conjugate system, or the conjugate method, which we use a lot in our second phase to really take our athletes' force development, their maximal force development, and their power up. So we have there's big increases in the max strengths, like I said, but there are 2 max effort days, meaning that our primary goal with our main lift is to go heavy, try to hit some PRs, and increase our force production, okay? Whether that be a squat, a deadlift, hip thrust, bench, push press, whatever it ends up being, there are 2 max effort movements to increase that strength. And with this, yes, you'll have some accessories and things like that complement it, but that is the main overarching goal. With that, you have 2 dynamic effort days. So this is where you start to add in things like chains and bands, because what we're doing is we're going to decrease the weight a little bit, and we're going to focus on the speed and the power of the bar and of the movement. This not only helps with letting your central nervous system recover from, just doing heavy all the time, all throughout the week, but it also allows you to work on greater power output for those movements, developing your quick twitch muscle fibers, something that's known as rate of force development, which are all going to lead to you being a more explosive athlete. This is typically done for power lifters or people who are trying to get really strong, but we want to be athletes, right? So in our strength and power program, we've adapted it by utilizing more contrast training, utilizing more athletic-based movements that are going to help you transfer over into your sport rather than just get super strong and slow. We make sure that it all works together to get the most out of the strength, but also power, speed, and everything in there inside of our programs. Now, when we started using this, we got super freaking strong and super freaking powerful, and I really think that a lot of athletes should do this once they're at a level that they can handle that and they've gone through a foundational period where they've developed some movement quality and some overall strength levels to be able to handle this type of training. The next method is just slept on by so many athletes and so many people, and it is the fastest way to get faster. And it's sled sprints or resisted sprints of any sort, okay? So what this does is it increases your sprint specific power, okay? So the correct angles, the velocities at which your limbs are moving, it's very specific to you sprinting and getting faster and having better agility. Okay, and it also increases your elastic strength, so the elastic strength in your tendons, which means, and we'll talk about it a little bit more down here with our plyos, but it essentially means our body's ability to store and then utilize elastic energy, not coming specifically from your muscles, but more from your tendons. Another reason this works so well is because you can put an athlete on a sled or like a resisted sprint with it behind you, and it's going to clear up and clean up a lot of the technique errors that tend to happen during the acceleration phase of your sprint. It really helps the right angles, attacking back behind yourself, and it teaches that athlete what it should actually feel like to accelerate, and then that improvement in your technique will also lead to you running faster and faster times. We can put athletes on sled sprints for about 2 weeks and drop them down anywhere from 0.1 to 0.2 off their 40 just from cleaning up their acceleration alone and getting them to feel what it feels like to actually produce power in their legs. Now there are some variations versus heavy versus light loads and the different types of results that you'll get. Some that you probably really shouldn't do if your main goal is getting super fast. But we definitely take care of all this in our programs with the sets, the reps, the intensities, the loads, the velocities that you should be at. And the other variations which you can do, stadiums, hills, things like that with that. Now, one of our featured methods that we use a lot, but this definitely gets abused and misused by so many athletes because it's become a little bit more popular in social media, is called the French contrast training method. This is a variation of the contrast training method that works through the entire force velocity curve, which you can see here. So the force velocity curve, with force being here, going up and down, and velocity going across horizontal. We have strength at the very top. So this is like that maximal strength. That's like the max effort day kind of we talked about, right? In terms of producing as much force as possible. Then we have speed strength, which is still pretty heavy load, but you're moving a little bit faster. Think of like an Olympic lift, like a clean pull. And then we have power. This is pure power, which is the maximization of force and your velocity to hit peak power. Then we have speed, strength, and velocity. So you need all of these in your power development, because there is a spectrum of power that you need to be developing in order to get the most out of it. So like I said, it is an advanced method. It has a huge demand on your central nervous system, so you cannot be doing it just months after months after months, because you will see very diminishing returns with it. But big increases in power and speed, typically used when we're trying to peak our athletes at the end of a couple of our phases that we've done, because we want to make sure we're hitting that phase potentiation with each of the phases that we're doing. But it is a great method. So when you're setting this up, you're going to start with a heavy compound movement, just like we did with contrast over here. So something that's max strength, right? Or the speed strength, maybe a little bit here. Then we're going into an unresisted plyometric. So that's going to be more on the speed strength, maybe power, depending on which plyometric you choose. Then you're going to go into a weighted plyometric. So that's going to be more in the power and the strength speed realm. And then you're going back down to a velocity or an overspeed type training to work the entire spectrum of power development. Typically recommend this to be in just one phase, about 4 weeks, maybe using it 2 times a week. That's what we use, because again, if you do it too often, too much, there is a demand on your central nervous system and you can fatigue quickly with it, which will lead to less performance than you are hoping for. Now, the last one, and this is something that all athletes should be doing, they should be doing it constantly, is utilizing extensive and intensive plyometrics. So intensive and extensive just means the type that you're doing. Think one, very bouncy, very quick, very light on the feet, where you're trying to produce forces quick and just be bouncy, right? Like pogo hops. And then the other, think of like broad jumps. This is like your max effort, max distance, right? Broad jump, you're using a lot of muscle driven power with this. Think vertical jump. That's the difference between these two. It really comes down to how much ground contact time you have within. They work slightly different areas of the power development with it, but what these do from a science kind of standpoint is that they increase that use and storage of the elastic energy. So remember we talked about elastic strength and energy up here. Adding these in will help you with transferring and using that when you're doing your sprints and jumps. It also increases your reflexes, right? Your reflexes and your coordination, and coordination is a huge piece of how much power you can actually produce, right? We need our muscles firing in the correct sequence and correct order in order to maximize that power output. Yes, and it'll increase your vert, your power, your speed, your acceleration. It'll actually increase your strength a little bit too if you are more someone who's been and not utilize these, due to the fact that you're gonna have better muscle coordination, you're gonna have better muscle firing capacity, you're gonna get more free energy from those tendons and your overall agility. They literally help with everything that involves being more athletic. There are many variations that we utilize, and some have more specific goals intended for them. So like landings, we have repeats, we have banded, depth, drop-in. There's many there are many types of variations that we can use with that. So these are the 5 best methods of training to have in your system to develop your strength and power. And if you want all of this taken care of for you, join the Strength and Power program, which is inside of our Elite Athlete project, by clicking the link below, and I'll see you in the next video.